My best friend spread lies about me to steal my place in the group. The group dropped her instead, and she came back to talk it out. Bree and I were best friends for 9 years, and she was the one who first pulled me into our group back when I was the new girl who did not know anyone. For a long time it was good. Then somewhere around year 7, the rest of the group started coming to me first for plans and for advice, and Bree did not take that well at all. She had a way of talking about friendship like it was a contest with a limited number of seats, and she used to joke that every group only has room for one favorite. I thought it was just a joke. It did not occur to me that she meant it until the lies started. Bree began telling the others little things that were not true, that I had complained about each of them behind their backs, that I had called one girl clingy and another one boring, and that I only kept them around because I liked being the center of attention. She was careful about it, dropping one poisoned thing at a time so it never looked coordinated. For a couple of months it worked. People got quiet around me, plans started happening without me, and the group I had spent 9 years in suddenly felt like a room I was no longer invited into. My birthday that year had 4 people cancel the week of, and 2 of them turned up at a dinner Bree threw the very same night. She slid into the chair next to whoever I used to sit beside and started signing the group cards first. For a while it looked like she had pulled it off. I did not fight it loudly because there is no clean way to prove you did not say something. I just kept showing up and let people see who I actually was. The lies came apart slowly and then all at once. Bree got greedy and told one of the girls, Leah, that I had said something cruel about Leah's new job, except I had been the one who helped Leah prep for that interview, and Leah knew it. Once Leah started asking questions, the other stories stopped lining up. People remembered that every nasty quote came from the same single source, and that the source had a lot to gain from my seat being empty. The group did not throw Bree a trial. They just stopped saving her a place. The same people she had whispered to started checking in on me again, a little embarrassed about it, and I let them. Around the same time, a girl named Nadia had been folding into our circle, somebody quiet who remembered your coffee order, and never once made friendship feel like a fight for a chair. Nadia ended up in the spot beside me without ever once trying to take it. By the time a year had passed, the group felt lighter than it had in ages, and Bree was on the outside of a circle she had spent years trying to run. Then on a Sunday, while Nadia and I were at the coffee place the group has always used, Bree walked in, spotted us, and came straight over. She pulled out the empty chair across from me without asking, and sat down like the last year had not happened. Bree said it was time the 2 of us talked it out, because 9 years does not just vanish over one falling out. I asked her which part she was calling a falling out, the lies or the part where she tried to empty my chair. She laughed and said the whole thing had been blown out of proportion on both sides. According to her, the group had been cruel to cut her off, and since I still had pull with everyone, the least I could do was put in a good word. Then she glanced at Nadia like she was a coat somebody had left on a chair, and asked if we could have this in private. I told Bree that Nadia was not going anywhere, and that anything she had to say could be said in front of the person sitting in the seat she came here to win back. Bree's smile got tight. She told me Nadia barely knew me and that I was throwing away a real friendship for somebody I met 5 minutes ago. But before I could respond, Bree did something I was not ready for. She dropped the smile. Not slowly, not in stages, just let it fall off her face. She got quiet. She looked down at the table and her hands folded together, and when she spoke again, her voice was completely different, smaller. She said, "This last year has been the loneliest year of my life." She told me she still wakes up every morning and checks her phone for the group chat she is no longer in. She said she scrolls to where it used to be and stares at the empty space, like maybe it will come back if she looks long enough. Then she told me she had driven past the restaurant we go to on Fridays and saw us through the window, all of us at the long table laughing. She said she had to pull over because she was crying so hard she could not see the road. Her voice cracked when she said it. She looked up at me with wet eyes and said, "I know I messed up. I know that. But does one mistake erase 9 years of me being the person who always showed up for you?" And it hit. 9 years is not nothing. I remembered the night my dog died, how I called her at 11 and she drove 2 hours to sit on my floor with me until the sun came up. I remembered my surprise birthday 3 years in a row, how she organized every single one. Those were real things. They were not fake. And sitting across from her with her eyes red and her voice breaking, I felt the guilt land on me like something heavy being set on my shoulders. Maybe I was being too hard. Maybe I owed her more than a closed door. I did not say any of that out loud, but I felt it, and I think she could see it on my face. Nadia was sitting right beside me, and she did not say a word. She put her hand flat on the table just a few inches from my arm, palm down, not grabbing, just there, like she was saying, "I am right here," without making a sound. And somehow that one quiet thing was enough to keep me from falling all the way into what Bree was selling. I took a breath and I looked at Bree and I said, "I am not saying 9 years meant nothing." I wanted her to hear that part first, because I meant it. But then I said the rest. I told her that what she did was not one mistake. It was months. Months of separate, careful, deliberate lies told to separate people at separate times. And each one was built to do the same thing, which was to make my friends stop trusting me. I said, "You did not mess up once, Bree. You ran a campaign." Something moved behind her face when I said that. The tears were still there. But underneath all of it, there was something harder. Like I had gone off the script she had written for this conversation. But she caught it and pulled it back so quick that if I had blinked, I would have missed it. She nodded slowly and said she was not asking for everything back at once. She said all she wanted was a chance to really talk. Just the 2 of us. Somewhere private. Somewhere we could be honest without. And then she paused and looked right at Nadia, an audience. She held that look for just a beat too long before turning back to me. She said she knew a quiet little spot on the other side of town, and I hesitated. I knew I should should say no. But the part of me that remembered 9 years was louder in that moment, so I said okay. Bree's whole body relaxed and she smiled, a smaller one. She said, "Thank you. That is all I am asking for." She stood up and walked out without looking back. Nadia did not say anything right away. She picked up her cup, took a sip, set it back down. Then she looked at me steady and clear the way Nadia always is, and she said, "You know she did not actually say sorry, right?" I opened my mouth to argue. The tears, the cracking voice, I know I messed up. All of it felt like an apology. But I ran the whole conversation back in my head. She said she messed up. She said the year was lonely. She said she cried in a parking lot. She asked for a chance. But she never once, not one single time said, "I am sorry." She never said, "I am sorry I lied about you." She never said, "I am sorry I hurt you." She described her own pain in detail. The closest she got to an actual apology was, "I know I messed up," which is not the same thing because I messed up is about her. "I am sorry I hurt you" is about me. And she never made it about me. I felt something turn over in my chest, a mix of being impressed and being a little sick because she had almost gotten me. Nadia did not push it any further. She just sat there while I figured it out for myself. I had already agreed to meet Bree, and I was going to keep my word, but I was going in with my eyes a lot more open than Bree probably wanted them to be. 3 days later, I walked into the coffee shop Bree had picked. She was already at a table by the window with her hands folded around a cup like she was posing for something. Hair done, outfit that looked casual but definitely was not. She looked like someone who had practiced the way she was going to be sitting when I came in. I sat down across from her, and before I even had my jacket off, she started talking. She said, "I have been doing a lot of thinking since we talked." She paused like she wanted me to appreciate that. Then she said, "I want to own what happened. I was jealous. I will admit that. You became the person everyone went to, and I panicked." She said it like she was reading from a card she had memorized, hitting every word at the right speed. She kept going. She said the lies were not something she planned. She said they came from insecurity. She said, "I am not a bad person. I just handled it badly." Then she looked at me like that was supposed to be enough. I let the silence sit for a second. Then I asked her a question I had been holding. I said, "What exactly did you tell Leah about me?" Bree paused. It was not a long pause, maybe 2 seconds, but I saw her eyes move the way they do when she is deciding which version of something to give you. She said, "I do not remember the specifics honestly. I was in a bad place and I said a lot of things I should not have." I nodded slowly and I said, "You told her I said her new job was a joke and that she would not last a month." I spent 3 nights helping Leah prep for that interview, Bree. I sat at my counter with her going over questions until midnight. "You knew that because I told you about it." Bree blinked, just once, slow. And then she said, "That is not how I remember it." There it was. The old pattern clicking into place like a lock turning. The dodge, the rewrite, the blur. She was not going to own the specific lies because owning them would mean admitting she knew exactly what she was doing. It is easy to say I was insecure and I handled it badly. It is a lot harder to say, I looked Leah in the face and made up a quote I knew would hurt both of you. Bree was never going to say that second thing. I did not push it because I could feel where this was really going. And sure enough, Bree pivoted. Her voice got firmer, less sad, more like someone making a case. She said the real issue was that the group punished her way too hard. They ghosted her. No conversation, no chance to explain her side. Then she said, "You could have stopped that." I told her I did not organize the group pulling away from her. People made their own choices once they found out what she had been saying. Bree shook her head like I was missing the point on purpose. She said, "But you could have spoken up for me. You had the influence. Everyone listens to you. You chose not to use it." And that is the moment I understood what this meeting was actually about. Bree was not here to apologize. She was here to negotiate her way back into the group, and she saw me as the gatekeeper. Every soft word, every "I was jealous" admission was part of a pitch. Then Bree said something that changed the whole temperature. She leaned forward and said, "I want to be honest with you because I think you deserve that." She said she had already reached out to a couple of people in the group individually. She had sent long messages to Leah and to one other girl, explaining her side of things. She said, "I am not asking your permission. I am giving you the chance to be part of the solution instead of the problem." She said it calmly. She said it like she was being generous, but I felt everything in my body go tight because I knew exactly what that was. That was not an update. That was a warning. She was telling me the train was already moving and I could either get on it or get run over by it. I did not say much after that. I said something about needing to think, and Bree nodded like she had expected that, and we finished our drinks with this thin layer of politeness stretched over everything like plastic wrap. I got in my car, and before I even turned the key, I called Leah. She picked up on the second ring and I said, "Did Bree message you?" Leah was quiet for a beat and said, "Yeah, she did. She told me the message was long, full of words like accountability and growth and moving forward." But then Leah said, "Something about it felt off." Then I read it again and I caught it. She kept saying, "Both sides made mistakes." Leah's voice got harder. She said, "What mistakes did you make exactly? You were the one getting lied about and I was the one believing the lies. What part of that was your mistake?" I asked if she had responded. She said, "No, and I am not going to." Over the next week, I found out just how far ahead Bree had already gotten. Leah called me Tuesday and said Bree had messaged at least 4 people in the group. Long messages, tailored, each one a little different, but built on the same bones. 2 of the 4 had not responded, but one of them, a girl who had always been the peacekeeper of the group, the one who hated conflict, had responded warmly. Over the next few days, the peacekeeper started saying things to the rest of us. Little things. Maybe we were too hard on her. People grow. It has been a year. Holding grudges is not really who we are. She was not being sneaky. She genuinely believed it, and that made it land harder than if Bree had said it herself, because when the nicest person in the room tells you that you might be being unfair, you listen. I could feel the ground shifting. Not a landslide, but enough. Bree did not need to convince everyone. She just needed to convince one person who everyone trusted to be fair. Then Nadia came over on a Wednesday night with takeout and her phone in her hand. She sat down on my couch and said, "She messaged me too." I put my fork down. Nadia read it out loud. It said, "I know you and I do not have history, but I think you seem like a really sweet person, and I would love the chance to get get to know you properly. I think there is room for all of us. Nadia looked at me and said, she is trying to get to me before I become a problem for her. I nodded because that was exactly what it was. Bree had looked at the board and made a move on the piece closest to me. I asked Nadia what she was going to do. Nadia picked her noodles back up and said, nothing. She does not get my energy. I sat with my food and thought about what to do. I could call everyone individually and tell them my side. But the second I started doing that, I would be doing exactly what Bree did to me. I was not going to become the thing that hurt me, but I was not going to sit still either. I made a decision. I was going to get everyone together in the same room at the same time, and I was going to tell them exactly what Bree said in our private conversation. Word for word. No spin. Just the truth. Laid flat on the table where everybody could look at it at the same time. I called Nadia and told her my plan. There was a pause and then Nadia said, good. Let them decide with all the information, not just hers. That night I sent a message to the group. I said I wanted to set up our usual Friday dinner and that before we ate I wanted to talk about something. Everyone said yes, but the peacekeeper replied separately. She said, is this about Bree? I said, yes. She said, I just think we should give people grace. I typed back, I agree, but grace and access are not the same thing. She did not respond and I did not push it. Then, the day before the dinner, my phone buzzed with a message from Bree. It said, I heard you were getting everyone together Friday. I think I should be there. If you are going to talk about me, I should get to speak for myself. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to say no, but another part of me knew something important. Bree is at her best in private. She is at her best in whispers, in side conversations, in one-on-one messages where she can shape the story without anyone else in the room to check it against. She is at her worst when everyone is listening at the same time, because her version only works when she can give each person a slightly different one. A room full of people hearing the same words at the same moment is the one stage she cannot perform on. I picked up my phone and typed back 2 words. Fine. Come. Friday came, and we were all at the long table at the restaurant we always use. Me, Nadia, Leah, the peacekeeper, and 3 other friends. Bree walked in last. She went around the table hugging people, and some of them let her, and some gave that stiff half hug where your arms barely touch. She sat down at the far end. I spoke first. I said, I know Bree has been reaching out to some of you individually over the last couple of weeks, and I think everyone deserves to hear the same information in the same room at the same time. I said I had met with Bree privately, and I wanted to share what was said. Bree's smile tightened, but she did not interrupt. I went through it carefully. I told the group Bree had said the lies came from insecurity, and were not planned. I told them she said the group had punished her too harshly. I told them she said I could have spoken up for her and chose not to. And I told them she had said, before that conversation was even finished, that she had already started reaching out to people on her own. I said, she told me she was giving me a chance to be part of the solution instead of the problem. The table went quiet. Then Leah spoke up. She said, the message she sent me used almost the exact same phrases you just said, word for word. It was not a personal message. It was a script. One of the other girls nodded and said, mine was almost the same too. The peacekeeper shifted in her seat and looked down at the table like she wanted to disappear into it. Bree finally spoke. She said, this is exactly what I was afraid of, that you would turn this into a trial. She looked around and said, I came here in good faith, and now I am sitting in front of a jury. Then she turned to the peacekeeper and said, you told me you believed in second chances. Is this what a second chance looks like? The peacekeeper opened her mouth, then closed it, and did not say a word. I said, I am not running a trial, Bree. I just wanted everyone to hear the same words in the same room, because the last time you talked to people separately, you told each of them a different version of the truth. Something cracked in her then. Her voice got loud and sharp, and she said, you love this. You love being the one everyone listens to. That is all this has ever been about for you. And then, just as fast as the anger came, it broke apart. Her eyes filled up and her voice dropped to something that sounded small. She said, I have no one. Do you understand that? I have literally no one. You all moved on and I am sitting in my apartment every weekend alone. I did a terrible thing and I know that, but I do not know how to fix it if nobody will even let me in the room. The whole table went silent. I felt it land in my chest. But then Leah, quietly, without any heat in her voice at all, said, Bree, you are in the room right now. And instead of just saying you are sorry, you spent the first 10 minutes trying to control how this conversation went. Bree opened her mouth to respond and nothing came out. I was the last one to speak. I did not raise my voice. I said, Bree, I sat here a year ago as the person you lied about, and I did not get a room full of people giving me a chance to explain. I just lost people. You are getting more than I ever got, and you are still trying to run it. I paused. Then I said, I do not hate you. I spent 9 years loving you like a sister, but I cannot let you back into my life when every conversation we have had in the last 2 weeks has been another version of you trying to manage me instead of actually being honest with me. You have not said sorry once. Not once. Bree stared at me. The whole room waited. Then she reached down and picked up her bag and stood up from the table and said, I guess 9 years really does mean nothing to any of you. She walked out. The door closed behind her. Nobody followed. The dinner kept going, quieter than it had been before. The peacekeeper looked at me from across the table and said, I am sorry I pushed the second chance thing. I did not know the full picture. Leah reached over and squeezed my hand under the table and left it there for a few seconds. Nadia did not say anything big. She just slid the bread basket closer to me and said, you should eat something. Walking home later that night, Nadia said, you did not enjoy that. I said, no, I did not. She said, that is how you know it was the right call. I thought about 9 years of friendship, about the girl who first pulled me into the group when I did not know anyone, and about the fact that the same girl spent months trying to push me out. I did not feel victorious. I just felt done. And done, I decided, was enough.